Hi, I'm Vicky. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making some Valentine's Day crafts. So, simple. Some of them are a little harder, but they're all fun, and I thought they turned out really nicely. So I hope you enjoy watching. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our toilet paper rolls and cut them to size. So I decided to do 3 bells, and I wanted to have each one be a slightly different size. And after I cut each piece, I also cut off a clapper. Well, it's also going to be the handle, so I'm going to take that little piece in a little while and cut it. So one side's the clapper and one side's going to be the top that I put on top of the belt for as a place to put the rope that would hold the bell. So I cut each of them. Like I said, each of them is a slightly different size. And then cut each of the clappers and the handles. And I put aside the rest of the cardboard because I didn't really need it. I mean, you could make more, but I just wanted to do 3. And I also picked out some pink little tiny ornaments I bought at Hobby Lobby at Christmas time. And a little bit of greenery that came off of a pick that I've had for a while that probably came from Michael's. But you could use any type of greenery. I just wanted just a little tiny bit. And once I had everything ready, I got my hot glue gun and I started to hot glue on the interior of the toilet paper roll. And then I'm going to attach the piece of the Easter egg. So this is the bottom part, not the top that looks very egg-like, but the bottom that's a little more rounded. And I did notice that some of the plastic Easter eggs I had were different sizes, but there's sort of a medium-sized one that fits right into the toilet paper holder. So you're going to want to try a few different sizes if you have numerous kinds. And I think those I bought from Michael's last year. Once you do the hot glue putting on the tops, then you want to do a hot glue around the bottom. So the look we're kind of going for is a weld. So you'd assume that if it was made out of metal that you would have to have welded it together. And it's sort of a rough weld, so I mean you could make it a lot neater, but I let there be quite a bit of glue. And then I made a weld line around the outside of where the egg and the toilet paper roll met. So again, it'll just be a little bit of a heavier line. And you'll see later I actually used a thicker, this other glue gun that does a thicker bead of glue to make it look a little more of a weld. And then I took the clappers and I just made the ends rounded so that they looked a little more like you would see inside of the bell. I guess you could also make them a little more shaped like with a thickness at the bottom, but I didn't. I just rounded the bottoms. So then I took some yarn. The video that I took this from used some rope, but I decided that I wanted a lighter color because I'm doing this for Valentine's Day. So I took this white yarn that I had and I just cut little hangers from the yarn. And like you can see, I'm adding a little more glue, a little bit thicker of a glue around the joints now for the weld looking pieces. And I do that to all of them. And then make sure you do the bottom weld too, because I think that one makes it look a lot more like a bell once it's painted. So then I'm just going to hot glue the clappers onto one side. And since they're cardboard, obviously you can bend them any direction you want. But once they, and you can also let them hang farther down or farther up depending on how much you want to see the clapper. I mean, obviously a lot of times with the bell, it'll be a little bit below the edge of the bell. So that's what I was trying to do, just so they would be sticking out a little bit. And then I also hot glued the little handles on the top so you have somewhere to string the yarn or your string or your rope. So after the glue was dry on the little handle parts, I pushed them down so they were rounded instead of pointed, which is how they had been when I had glued them on, so they were a little easier to handle. But I didn't want them to be pointed because that looked a little silly. So then the next thing I did was I just took some black paint and I painted everything. Just one nice, reasonably not thick coat, but a good covering coat, I'll say, even on the plastic eggs, which I wasn't sure it would stick that well. Now, I didn't do the whole way up the interior, just enough that if you have them hanging somewhere, you don't see the cardboard. But I didn't really get very intense on the interiors because I didn't want to break off the clappers. So I did find on the plastic I had to redo a little thicker coat than I was planning on it. I didn't want to put on 2 coats just because I didn't want to wait for the paint to dry twice, but I didn't want any of the color of the egg to show through. Now I am going to do another coat of paint, but it will be the silver that turns them into the silver bells. So I just wanted to make sure this was reasonably covering all of that, the color from those eggs. The cardboard was really easy to paint. So then once those were dry, I took this silver metallic paint that I use in a lot of projects from Rust-Oleum, and I take a rag, and all I do is sort of rag it on. And you really don't need very much paint. I just sort of dip it into the lid, as you can see. And then I just started rubbing. And depending on how old you want the bells to look, you do more or less of a intense sort of rubbing. The more silver coating that you'll put on there, the less old they'll look. And so I sort of like I did quite a bit on these because they had a lot of crevices on the weld joints. And I thought it looked really nice that way, but you could do even a little less, I think, and they would look really sort of antique-y. But I thought they turned out pretty nice. So just a good bit of a coat, and it is a little messy to use the ragging technique because you get a lot of paint on your fingers, but it's washable paint. Just, it's latex, so it just washed right off. Then I hot glued on the rope, or, well, in this case, my yarn that was like rope. And I just stuck it through the little handle and hot glued it right inside there and left a little piece sticking out on the one side. It would look nice, too, if you had a longer piece and you strung it the whole way through and just held them up by that. But I just wanted the one hanger sort of piece. And then I hot glued the greenery and the little ornament. And the only reason these really were Valentine's Day bells as opposed to just bells, I guess, is the fact that the little ornaments were pink. I thought they were so cute and they would look nice for Valentine's Day. So once I hot glued all the little ornaments and the greenery on these, that is the end of the project. I thought they turned out really cute. And the set of 3 is nice. You can hang them somewhere and they would just, you could use them for any holiday, but I thought these would not look nice for Valentine's Day. So one thing I really wanted to make for Valentine's Day this year was a Valentine's gnome. Obviously, gnomes are everywhere for the last year or two, and they are just so freaking cute that I wanted to make one myself. And I thought most of the gnomes are pretty simple looking, and I thought I could paint my own and see. I mean, I'm not really an artist, any great artist, but I thought the simple round shapes of them would be easy to paint. So the first thing I did was I took a piece of scrap wood. It's pretty thin. It's more of a plaque sort of shape. I mean, you could buy one, but I happen to have scrap wood that was like that, and it's probably from a palette. And then I did 1 coat of white acrylic paint as a primer base. Oh, and here's my drawing. I just did a little drawing to get an idea of how I wanted to paint them. And then the next coat was as you can see, was a coating of pink paint. And this was just some paint I bought on Amazon from a place called Shuttercraft. It came in a pack of 18 different colors, and I just went with the pink that they had. And then I used my drawing. I mean, I tried a few drawings to get the look I wanted for my gnome. And then I just sort of freehanded. Though it might be easier if you took a pencil. I mean, depending on how comfortable you feel with just painting. Because once you paint, I mean, I could do another coat of paint to cover up. But I figured the shapes, like I said, they're so round and sort of easy to do that I didn't even draw it. But it probably would be easier if you did a little outline with a pencil, just so that you could kind of, and then if you didn't like it, you could redraw it before you started painting. And I decided to go pretty simple with this Valentine's gnome and just use the 3 colors I had, for the red and the white for his beard and the hearts and the pink. So the pink was the background, but it'd also be his nose once I get to that point. And of course the nose and the beard are the key for the gnomes. So I thought about using some other colors, giving him little make his little boots brown or whatever. But then I thought, it's a Valentine's Day. I might as well just go with the Valentine's Day colors. So So once I filled in the main body and beard and hat parts, I wanted to try to make the beard on the bottom look a little fluffy. So first I tried this where I dabbed on some thick paint down at the bottom. And it did make it a little fluffier, but then I thought his beard might be too fat. So I took some more. It was hard to know for sure. The good thing about a gnome is that as long as he is, you get the nose and you get the cute little hat, he's going to look pretty good. So I started thinking about the pink paint, but then I realized I wanted to do his feet with white. So I just made some big round feet-like things. I mean, not very good ones. And then making the heart was pretty easy. I just used the edge of the brush to do the top. And you can see all I really did was sort of do a brush stroke in the direction of the top of the heart. And it turned out very heart-like, I thought. So it was very simple. I mean, I didn't even practice it. So I think that anyone can do it if I can. And then his big pink nose. So I had considered adding like something round on top and gluing it on, but I decided to try the paint and see how he looked. And I thought he turned out pretty cute, but I did touch up a little bit on the beard because I didn't think that his feet, well, on the beard and the feet, I didn't think his feet were big enough. He looked a little out of proportion. The other thing you can do is add arms, and some people just put hands. I mean, everyone sees the different kinds of gnomes. But I decided that for Valentine's Day, he could just be his hands are somewhere underneath his beard. And then I touched up a little bit more with the red on the bottom because I thought the beard was a little too long and he didn't have enough body. And I wanted it to give it a little more dimension on the beard as well because I thought it looked a little too straight across. So this project is something I've been doing for quite a few of the last few holidays. I've been making stacks of ornaments, whether it's adding a little sparkle or adding a little glitter or just putting on as much crazy stuff as I could. So the Valentine's Day one is a little more straightforward. I took another piece of scrap wood, maybe 3 by 5, and I gave it a coat of white acrylic paint as like the primer. And then I gave it another coat of paint. It was mostly white, but I had a little bit of pink left over on the brush from painting the gnome project. And I thought that would be nice because of since it was Valentine's Day. And then I just did the very lightest layer of fine white sparkly glitter on the top just to give it a little bit of glitter. I didn't want a lot on there. And once the paint and the glitter and everything had dried, I started hot gluing my ornaments. And I decided to do 2 red and a white. And it worked out perfectly in terms of the number of ornaments I needed. So that was actually kind of lucky, but you could lay them out on the paper and see how many you needed, or if you wanted to do a different proportion. One thing I did find as I was doing this, I hot glued the base. I had quite a bit of glue on the base, but I really needed a lot. Not just underneath it, but sort of on the sides to make a little stand for that bottom ornament because, of course, it's not a lot of weight, but it is holding a good bit more than you're typically holding with hot glue. So I added extra glue as I was building it too, because it tipped over a little bit. So, and you can see I ended up with a vaguely heart shape. And I decided to also add a little bit of a vase filler that was a heart shape to the bottom to give it that bottom piece of the heart shape. And I also added a few vase fillers, those heart-shaped vase fillers, onto the piece of wood, just to give it a little more sparkle. I don't usually plan too much ahead when I'm doing these sparkly stacks. I mean, I think about what I want to do, but I also sort of go with what I feel like as I'm adding things. So we do get a little bit of a spontaneous sort of feel to it. So hopefully you can tell. So the last project was this little shelf sitter that I made with another piece of scrap wood and a heart-shaped wreath, tinsel wreath that I bought at Michael's probably a couple years ago. Now this piece of wood is probably 4 by 6. It's a little bigger and thicker, but again, it's just a piece of scrap wood, so this was kind of, I wanted it to be big enough to be able to hot glue the wreath to it. And then I just painted the whole thing white. So this I didn't do an extra coat of like a primer type of coat. I just did one coat. And then once I had added the white, I took some red glitter and did a really pretty thick coat of red glitter onto this. And you can see I did it inside of it's the top of a tin, and I like to use this for different painting and glitter and things. And then I'll put the rest of the, the leftover glitter that fell off back into the container. But once I had that layer of glitter, I let it dry pretty thoroughly. And then I hot glued the heart onto this block. Now, one thing I'm hoping, since the hot glue will go sort of through the glitter layer and attach to the wood so that this heart stays on there. And once I got that attached and the glue set up, I took a heart-shaped ornament that I got at Michael's last year, a light pink. I decided to, I'm not always sure about pink and red, but I thought that the pink made a nice contrast with the rest of all the red glitter and tinsel that was on there. So I just glued that right in the middle.